the Honorable Chairperson, among some honorable guests, I would like to thank specially Dr. Sister M. Francisca Flora, who is Secretary of Fatima College, and also Dr. Sister G. Salin, Saya Mary, Secretary of Fatima College, and also Head of the Research Center of English, Dr. Miss A. Rosalind Mary, and also organizers of the event, including Dr. Kala S.J., who is a specialist on Stephen Gill and is the present research guide and supervisor, and also Dean of Academic Affairs and Associate Professor of English of Fatima College. I would like to thank and appreciate the organizing work also of Ms. A.J. Bernita, Assistant Professor of English, then Ms. A. Pratheebha, who has completed her doctoral thesis on a comparative study on Stephen Gill, and Mahmoud Darwish. My thanks will remain incomplete without mentioning a specialist on Stephen Gill, Professor Dominic Savio has written several papers on Stephen Gill and has guided a scholar for a doctoral thesis on Stephen Gill. I am happy that he is here this evening. To the best of knowledge, as far as I think, Pratheebha is not the first scholar to compare the works of Stephen Gill with another creative writers. There are research papers from the point of view of comparative studies, but comparing with Pratheebha's dissertation, they are shorter, they are like papers, like articles. There are also some dissertations, but not like this one, entirely on Stephen Gill and comparing it with other creative writers. However, Pratheebha's research is unique. She is the only one who has picked up a poet from Palestine, a nation of centuries-old culture. Pratheebha has made a comprehensive comparative study in a doctoral dissertation, a complete PhD thesis. I admit that comparisons are not easy. I also admit that comparisons are not tasteful either for everyone, especially when books are evaluated, especially when works are dissected for the purpose of understanding and for enjoyment. Mahmoud Darwish is known to his people who fight for their rights, Mahmoud Darwish has become a symbol for all those who fight democratically for justice and for peace. I am certain that this thesis by Pratheebha will be the prime source of literary pride for the family, for the relatives, and for friends of Mahmoud Darwish. I am sure that Pratheebha's finding will be a beacon of hope for the nationals of the country of birth and the country of adoption of Mahmoud Darwish. I am absolutely without doubts that the fans and readers of Mahmoud Darwish, as well as his compatriots, will find in this critical work a mana to strengthen their muscles to continue working peacefully for a better world of peace, for a better world of order. I have every reason to believe that Pratheebha's dissertation of comparative studies would be a great help to those who want to study further this prominent and remarkable poet of Palestine, and Palestinians would be proud of Pratheebha's scholarly achievement. There are obvious similarities between the life of Mahmoud Darwish, a poetic son of Palestine, and the life of Stephen Gill. We both are exiled and uprooted from the lands of our birth. Mahmoud Darwish was born in Palestine. He lived also in Israel. He went to Lebanon and settled in the States. I was born in that part of India which is now in Pakistan. My parents with the family came to India, who were uprooted and became diaspora in India, in our own country of birth. From my early life, I started dreaming of settling abroad for various and serious reasons, and that various and serious reasons are the fountain of inspiration for my creative works. I went to Ethiopia to teach for 3 years. From Ethiopia, I immigrated to England, and from England I came to Canada to study further, and finally I settled here in Canada. I call myself a self-exiled poet and novelist. I draw my literary waters from the well of my early life in New Delhi. Like Darwish, I have written in different languages, though my main and serious work is in English. We both started writing from the early days. We both express our hopes. We both express our fears. We both express our dreams. However, unlike any poet and novelist that I have read and known, I can say with full confidence that I have condemned modern terrorism extensively in my literary works. I condemn terrorism directly and logically in my creative works, particularly in my modern epic, The Flame. I believe that peace is the legitimate child of peaceful beings. I feel it is important. I feel it is important to point out the message I give in my poetry and in my novels. The chief message in my writing, particularly in my novel The Coexistence, is live and let live. The focus of my writing is love. Focus of my writing is peace. That is based on the ideology of live and let live. This is the message not only of Indian saints. This is the message not only of the sages around the world. This is the message not only of the Buddha. This is the message not only of Christ, who has influenced me the most. This is also the message of Canada, the country of my adoption. I have mentioned that I draw the water for the ink of my literary outbursts from the inexhaustible well of my early life in New Delhi. Here in New Delhi, I experienced the remorseless brutalities on both sides of the border of India and Pakistan that hardened the hearts of both the Hindus and Muslims. That resulted in an intense atmosphere also for Christians. These remorseless brutalities and intense atmosphere appear in my poetry in different forms. During those riots between Hindus and Muslims, we didn't know if there would be another dawn. We didn't know if there would be another day for our breakfast. And when there was, it brought tales of more brutalities. I saw people running for help and being pelted with bricks and then burnt alive, while the patrolling police ignored the cluster of misguided zealots who were in the street in spite of curfew. I perceived death dancing in the eyes of the minorities. I heard the cries of infants, and I read about the butchery of the innocent as if that was happening in front of my eyes. Curfews used to be lifted for a couple of hours for citizens to buy the necessities of life. Items like sugar, items like rice, items like wheat flour and several other eatables had disappeared from the stores, if there were any. Their prices had shot up because those who could afford started hoarding them. Minorities suffered this way, and also because of other fears. Both the Hindus and Muslims were engaged in this ugliness for religious reasons. And Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated because he tried to end the drama of degradation to humanity. Every time there was a stir caused by the wind, every time there was a car on the streets, every time there was the bark of the dog or the mew of the cat, we froze inside our house. Every time there was anything unusual, unseen tragedy was expected. The nights were nightmares, and the days did not bring any hope Often the mornings dawned with more lamentable events. It was not easy to sleep when night after night the ghosts of fear looked straight into our eyes. It turned into an obsession that afflicted me every minute of every hour, that whom to trust and to take in confidence. Passers-by and neighbors appeared to be the possible killers. Apparently, the dark forces of religion roamed around freely to terrorize minorities. I began to find ways to run away from the murderous religious rage, to grow as a creative writer in a fearless atmosphere. I began to flutter my wings, to escape the prison of suffocation in search of an El Dorado for peace. It was a miracle. It was a real miracle to receive a teacher's position in Ethiopia. It is said that the word impossible should be removed from dictionary because nothing is impossible. But when I think of my circumstances in India in those days, I can say it was impossible for me to get out of India because of my prayers, because of my faith in the Almighty. The Ethiopian Ministry of Education sent me a ticket and assured to give me 3 months' salary in advance when I reach Addis Ababa. House and medical care were free. Based on that letter of appointment, I received my passport and visa without any struggle. And if I start talking about this miracle, believe me, there is so much to say about that calendar, dates on calendar will keep changing. If I put all my miracles together that came in my life, then a huge volume can be prepared. Coming back to my writing, my message is live and let live because of the ideology of live and let live bring peace. We live in an environment that is without peace. In this poisonous environment, killers are glorified, and those who make wars are honored and praised. The fact is, peace is the heart of the body, and if the heart stops, life stops. Peace is a liberator. Peace is a healer. If there is any true religion, that is a religion of peace. If there is any true language, that is the language of peace. If there is any true culture, that is culture of peace. Peace and love are the supreme sources for great works of art. Peace is ocean. The energy that comes from this ocean is infinite. Human is the wave of the infinite ocean, and that infinite ocean is the Almighty. Every organ of the body needs peace to function properly. This is the way to gain longevity. This is the way to gain disease-free living. Humans have subdued the earth, and earth now grows food more than there is a need. Even more food has become a problem now. Singers sing for peace, scholars write for peace, statesmen talk for peace, An army fight to push peace. Unfortunately, peace is still elusive. Unfortunately, peace is still a dream. Unfortunately, peace is still at the podium of leaders. Still in the ceremonies of book releases. Peace is not in the world. The question is why? The answer is in my poetry. I have tried to give to some extent in my novels also, and I am putting in my talks on YouTube. No matter what tool is used, it boils down to the blueprint of live and let live to bring peace, to bring prosperity to multicultural societies. My friends, sages have been pointing out for centuries the recipe of live and let live for the peace that leads to longevity, for the peace that leads to healthy living, for the peace that is prosperity. This conviction of the sages is the outcome of compassion. All these sages learned this recipe for peace from the University of the Self, the meaningful recipe that sages received from the ocean of the Self was to live and let live. That means that all should be allowed to live their lives the way they want, in an atmosphere of love, in an atmosphere of understanding. This recipe was not that much in need during the days of Mahavira. This recipe was not that much in need during the days of Buddha. This recipe was not that much in need during the days of Jesus Christ as it is needed in the world of today. It has been pointed out by some compatriots that discrimination that I try to avoid in the land of my birth exists also in the land of my adoption. I would like to share that my first bold writing against discrimination is in the land of my adoption, and it is in my novel, The Coexistence. This kind of bold expression was not possible in the land of my birth, where discrimination was life-threatening. There is no doubt that for my poems, for my letters to the editor, for my other writings, I received threats even in some form in Canada. Some of these threats were subtle and some were clear threats, but these threats were from newcomers, from India and Pakistan. These threats were not from white citizens. I was asked to say mostly about my life. Truth is, I have not said directly much about my early life, but that is to reincarnate the silent, wrenching pains. I have described some gruesome realities of these silent, wrenching pains in the prefaces of the collection of my poems. I have also touched these gruesome realities in my interviews and depicted them here and there in my novel, The Coexistence, and also in my novel, The Chhattisgarh. It is the bitterness of the water of my early life that runs in the arteries of my writings. This bitterness in different forms often emerge in my dreams even now. I do not want to see that bitterness in my life again. We immigrated to New Delhi from Pakistan. My father owned a company at Sialkot in Pakistan. The company manufactured and exported the sports goods such as field hockey sticks, bats for cricket, tennis rackets, and shuttlecocks. When India was divided in 1947, the company of my father went bankrupt, as several other outfits had. My parents moved to New Delhi, the capital of India, to be in a peaceful place. But we never saw good days after the division of India. In Pakistan, we had a good, comfortable life. In Karol Bagh, New Delhi, my parents could afford to rent a one-room house in Devnagar, block number 1, in a corner that had neither running water and not washroom facilities. We depended on utilities. We were 5 children and parents 7, and I feel really an unbearable pain to describe those days. Perhaps one day I will be able to have courage to express myself. My first visit to New Delhi, my friends, after settling in Canada, was after 13 years. I may have made 4 or 5 short visits to New Delhi whenever I was invited by colleges and universities. I used to find that it was not the New Delhi where I used to play gulli danda on the streets and where I used to fly kites. I used to find that it is not the New Delhi where I used to buy golgappas, ganderis, and kulfis from the peddlers. I used to find that it was not the New Delhi where electrical trams were used in Chandni Chowk, and where I used to see men and women silently sitting from the early day to evenings, breaking small rocks with their small hammers in the hilly areas of Karol Bagh to make the area flat. I used to find that it was not the Karol Bagh that had an area called Ragarpura, where people from outside of New Delhi, perhaps called Bagris, concentrated to work with skins of animals and repair and made beautiful shoes, although that area used to stink badly due to the skins they used. This was not the Karol Bagh, where I used to buy pans, asking the shopkeeper to mix that pan with the glucand, which was used only at selected shops. I used to find that there was no Ajmal Khan Road, where we boys used to go nearly every evening and walk within 3 or 4 blocks. Real fun for us used to be only in those crowded 3 or 4 blocks, though it was a long road. I made it a special point to visit these areas, but these areas were not there. There was nothing to recognize. I would suggest to those who want to know more about my personal life to read about my visit to India in 1999. I was invited by the Association of Canadian Studies by a university in Shimla. That was the year when Dr. Graham from Australia was burnt alive with his 2 children in India. The article is about my visit to India in 1999, and it is on my website, stephengill.ca, under Travelogue, and the title of the article is The Year to Break Silence. It is an eye-opening article based on real facts. I feel it is now time to have some rest. All I can say that I hear the sound of spring in the stillness of the autumn. Towards the end, I would like to thank Professor Dr. Kala for inviting me, and my heartiest congratulations to Pratheebha for producing her doctoral thesis. I wish her more success in her life, my friends. Thanks for listening patiently. God bless you all.